Hi, welcome back to my channel. This is Shady Atia, and today's presentation is about choosing your name. The audience of today's presentation is early career researchers, potential PhD students and PhD candidates, people who plan to travel abroad, and potentially immigrants. The purpose of today's presentation is to help you choose a good name for your scientific and professional career, and as we know, your name is your brand. So the presentation will try to help you answer the following questions. Will you use your middle name or omit it? Will you use your birth name or initials or your married names or your mother's family name? Will you hyphenate your double last name? We try to answer these questions in this presentation. I'm going to give a short introduction, explain why it's important to choose a name, how to make it consistent, comply with ISO standard, and transliteration between non-Latin languages to Latin languages, examples, and finally some takeaway messages. Let's start with the reasons behind that. Well, as you can see, choosing your name is very important because your name is your brand. A simple name can help others to remember you. And here is an example of a famous Belgian athlete. Her name originally is Nafissatou Thiam, but she changed her name to become Nafi Thiam. She is originally from Senegal, she is Belgian, but because the first name is not common in Belgium and it's difficult for many people, it was shortened to be Nafi Thiam. By that, she is branding her name and making it easier for others. Another important take into account when you are choosing your name, there are some countries that select to have the family name first, followed by first names. This is the case of Vietnam, for example. So it's very important that you ensure consistency and avoid confusion, especially if somebody is traveling from Vietnam to Western countries or to Europe or North America. So in this context, it's important to be aware about it and to make it easier for others to understand. The same applies the other way around. I can imagine people coming from Europe traveling to Vietnam, they must respect the rules and regulation in the Vietnamese context. So the rules can be applied in both directions. Another example here, we need to ensure consistency and avoid confusion. So don't confuse people with different names. However, in many countries, in Africa for example, let's take the case of Cameroon. In Cameroon, it's very common to have two first names, even sometimes three, and to have two family names. In fact, this is very confusing if you are not distinguishing those names and if you are writing the names all on one line. It will be very difficult for others to understand what exactly is your name. What should I call you? Should I pick up a name or what should I do? And as you can see in the passport here, we have two family names and we have two first names. This is not so easy, especially if somebody from Cameroon travels to a country where it is commonly using only a first name and a family name. So choosing your name is important because also it can reduce the bias against you and reduce the discrimination against you. And as you can see, some studies in the United States indicate that names that come across as female, they come across as African American or as African or as Indian, Ethiopian, Asian, Arab, Muslim or foreign are evaluated more negatively. So if you have something to do with that, it will be very helpful to make your name easier to be recognized by others. Now, another important reason why it's very important to choose your name, because most of us today in this global world will be most probably working or studying abroad. Some of the people will immigrate. This means that we will need to issue a passport. We will need to issue a language proficiency certificate. And in this case, most of the time, people travel to industrial or to standardized countries where there is only a first name and a second name option. And this means that you have to make this choice and you have to be conscious about this choice. Now let's go back and give you some background information. Where did this all started? Because historically we had long names, we have tribal names, we had chains of names, but with the Bayonne Decree, this all changed. Most of the people start with the Bayonne Decree, which started in France, but the earliest country that mandated having only a first name and a family name, or a surname and a first name, it is China. Followed by France, In 1811, Napoleon decreed that everyone who did not already have a surname had to begin using one. So since 1811, most European countries were forced to have a family name and a first name. Now, when we look at the whole word map, we will discover that many countries, they comply with this rule of only a first name and only a family name. Most of the countries that are in the yellow zone. Some countries in this yellow zone try to create a compromise, so you will find in the first name 2 names and in the family name 2 names. So in reality there are 4 names, but they are adapting. Some other countries reverse the name order, so they put first the family name and then the first name, like in China or in Vietnam, for example, or in Japan. And we have another group of countries where they do not have a first name, they only have a chain name. Those countries, they have only a full name with a chain of names starting from the son, the father, the grandfather, and finally the family name. As you can see, the countries that are in green, centralized in the Arabia bit, there is also in Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and in Mongolia, and in Myanmar, for example. So these are examples of these countries, and in this case, we can say that these countries do not have a first name, or the first name is unknown, FNU citizens. And for sure, in some cases, we can have LNU, which is last name unknown in some cases. So let me give you an example of myself. I have an Egyptian passport. In the Egyptian passport, I don't have a first name. Even though my name is Shady, my family name is Atia, but this is when I came to Belgium. This happened earlier before, when I traveled abroad. But as you can see, my whole chain name is listed on one line. And in the passport, you have only full name. So first name is unidentified by any Western authority. If I travel to United States, if I travel to Europe, first name is unidentified or unknown according to the Egyptian passport. So this is an example of the importance of selecting a name and preparing for this moment of traveling from a country that has a certain way of naming to the Western standardized way of naming with only a first name and a family name. So allow me to talk with you a bit about legality and consistency. It's very important when you are going to choose your name to make sure that the name is legal and it is consistent. So as a scientist, for example, when you publish for the first time, you have to make sure that your name is consistent. So the more consistent your name is throughout your career, the easier people will know you and the easier you build up a reputation. It is totally unacceptable to have published during the master's a publication with a name, and then during the PhD with another name, and then during your postdoc or when you became later a senior scientist with a third name, and when you get married with a fourth name. So it's important to choose a unique name. It's important to make sure to publish under your legal name, because sometimes you will be needing, for example, to apply for a visa. So the authorities that will issue the visa will cross-check your publishing name or your name on your publication with your name on the passport. There should be a match in a way or another. You should never change your academic name. This should be constant. You get married, you don't get married, you're a female, don't change it. It has to be the same. You can use informal versions of your name for social media, but make sure that there is a consistent scientific academic name throughout your career. Now, citizens born abroad, they can also have a conflict. Many people are born abroad and then they move to their home country. In this case, what happened? They will have a birth certificate in the country where they are born, respecting the rules in the country where they were born, and then they will have another name in their home country where they are living. And if they issue a birth certificate, most of the time the birth certificate in the country of birth does not match the birth certificate in the country of origin. So make sure your name on your passport matches your name in your national and foreign birth certificate. I had this problem. I was born in Germany. I had only two names, a first name and a family name, while I lived my early life in Egypt, so I had four names and I didn't have a first name. So as a confusion, when I issued two birth certificates, I had a discrepancy between both, so it was a very big conflict, or a difficult conflict to understand, and finally I had to do a lot of process, go through a complex process to fix, rectify something that I'm not responsible of. So make sure that your name is consistent and legal, and when you cross borders from these following countries to any yellow country or a country with only a first name and a family name, make sure that you are aware and that among all your 4 or 5 or 6 names that are lined as a chain, make sure that you pick up the first and the last to make it easy for everyone and not go through the middle initial names. Who are the countries that are using full name without first name and they are using kind of chain name? Egypt, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Mongolia, Philippines, Jordan, Myanmar, Yemen, Bahrain and Kuwait, Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, UAE or Emirates. So these are examples of countries that should be very aware when they are naming their kids or when they are traveling abroad with their passport. They need to be very aware about it, because nobody in the West, let's say you're coming to Europe from these countries, you're going to United States, you're going to Australia, nobody is looking forward to have 4 names of you. Just keep it simple. People have traditions, so it's first name and last name. Also, it happens that in many countries in Africa and Asia, they have 2 middle name, they have 2 last name and they have 2 first name. And this is so confusing. For example, if you are coming from Cameroon, Congo, Philippines, Ethiopia, Madagascar, you can see that on the passport, the name, you will find 2 names, and the first name, you find 2 names. This means that in total you have 4 names. If you go to a Western countries, they don't want to get in this noise. They want to know only what is your first name and your last name. If you don't make it easy for them, they will just choose, and then you will have a big confusion. So try from the beginning to keep only first name and only 1 last name. Also, it's very important for females and women. When they get married, they have to avoid married names, because in academia or in research, your name is a brand. If your name is, for example, Audrey Chevalier, Audrey is the first name, Chevalier is the family name, and you are getting married to somebody and you are taking their family name, you will unfortunately add Audrey with Chevalier and let's say the husband name Monet. It will be complex. The algorithm of Google will not recognize you, and you will lose citation and you will confuse others. So I strongly recommend female scientists who are starting to career to, if they decide to take their husband name, do it in the official documents, but don't do it in your academic career. Especially if they will divorce, it will be worse, because then they will have Chevalier Monet for some years, and then Chevalier only for some years, and then Chevalier back for some years. It's a mess. So I advise strongly females to not take the husband name in their academic career, in their communication on Google Scholar, the ORCID, the Scopus ID, the ResearchGate ID, and so on and so on. Also, I have a message here for people coming from Latin America, Spain, Portugal, Brazil, for example, Angola, all countries that are related to Spanish language or Portuguese language. Do not use too much last names. It is always better to choose one name and keep this name. Why I'm saying this? Because in Spain, Latin America, Portugal, Angola, for example, in these countries, it is common to take the first name, Cristiano, Ronaldo, 2 first names, Dos Santos Aveiro, meaning that you have most of the time father family name and mother family name. Now, this is very good in the country of the context. But when those people move to a Western country, it becomes very confusing. What should we call these people? Should I call him Cristiano dos Santos? Should I call him Cristiano Aveiro? Finally, he chose this player, soccer player, to be Cristiano Ronaldo. Whatever. I'm not telling you or implying what should you do. I'm just saying pick up one of those names. First, family, communicate it to everybody. It's your brand. But don't let others get confused. So we can see this phenomenon in many countries. In Vietnam, I told you before, they start with the surname or the family name, then the middle name, then the first name. So Nguyen Ngoc Truong Son. How on earth a Westerner should understand this name? Automatically, Nguyen here in Belgium will be the first name, and Son will be the family name. While in reality, it's totally wrong. The first name is Son, and the family name is Nguyen. But on the passport, it is one line. So what to do? Or on the passport, you find Nguyen, first name, and then Ngoc Truong Song are on the first name. Confusing. Be aware about it and make sure that I'm not telling you change your passport. I'm just saying is that when you communicate your scientific name, make it simple. Select something that you wish to be called with and share it with everybody, and don't confuse people with 4 names or 3 names. In Chinese, be careful with the translation. Chinese actor Luo Zongxi become Leo Luo in English. This is another issue also. So this is a complexity. In Malaysia, a lot of names, they have a lot of names. They have a chain name. So it's better to choose only 2. For example, the sixth prime minister of Malaysia, Mohammed Najib bin Tun Haji Abdul Razak. Simple. Keep it Najib Razak. Basta. Keep it simple. So, whatever your name and the complexity you have with your name in your passport, don't directly communicate that in your academic name. Legally, communicate your official name with legal authorities in the country you immigrate to, but when you write your name in Google Scholar doesn't care. ResearchGate doesn't care. Scopus doesn't care. In this sense, I give you some advices which name to select. In other countries, like in Nordic countries of Scandinavia or in Russia, they have patronymic names. So they have Ivan, Ivanovich, Ivanov, or Stephen, Stefan, Steve, Johansson, Johnson, for example. These are all sometimes confusing. Some countries have some prefixes, like the Dutch, the Arabs, the Israelis or the Hebrews in general, French. So you say in Dutch, Jan de Jong. You say in French, Le Brun, Le. In Arabic, Ben Musa. Or in also in Hebrew, Ben Musa. In also Arabic, you say Abu, and so on. So these are all additional prefixes. In India, for example, normally they use first name, middle name, and surname. So you have Aishwarya Rai Bachchan. Keep it simple. Keep it Aishwarya Bachchan. So again, the same recommendation. Keep it simple. Same applies to the Middle East. Like I told you, there's a very famous Egyptian botanist, Lutfi Bulus Tawadros. Keep it simple. Lutfi Bulus. That's it. So these are all examples what should be done. But also from a legal point of view, you need to be aware about something called transliteration, which means that there is international ISO standards that help you to transliterate the name from a non-Latin language to a Latin language. Here, for example, I selected the language, Ethiopian language, for example. So you can translate this language simply by using a specific ISO standard. It applies to also Cyrillic language, Cantonese, Mandarin, Arabic, Hebrew, and so on and so on. So be aware about these ISO standards, because you might transliterate your name in your mother tongue to a Latin wording, and then it is matching ISO standards. And believe me, sometimes some judges in Europe, when they have immigrants making request of immigration or neutralization, they ask them to transliterate their language, their name in their original mother tongue to a Latin name. And in this case, they must comply with the ISO standards that exist for that. Well, let me move to another topic that is important and come up to the end of the presentation. My message here is very clear. Make a very unique identity for yourself. Unique identity will allow people to distinguish your name, but in the same time validate that this is your real proper name. So proper compiling of citation statistics will never be done if you are using different versions of your name in the academic and scientific world. Algorithms can't figure it out. Algorithms are not so intelligent to understand, yeah, this guy is from Cameroon, so actually it's the second first name and the third and the first family name that should be the right one. No. So don't confuse the algorithms from the beginning by pushing the 5 or 4 names on the identity of the orchid, for example. Scholars won't find you, and your work will not be found. There will be confusion, there will be noise, and if you get married also and change your name, the whole situation will be more difficult. Where I'm talking to reconsider your name and only select 2 names, I'm talking about Google Scholar, Scopus ID, ORCID, Academia, ResearchGate, LinkedIn. Only 2 names. Keep it simple. So this brings us to the next step, which is simply bias and discrimination before I end up the presentation. If you are traveling abroad, leaving your country, there is a big chance that there will be bias against you, misunderstanding, and sometimes discrimination. In country, for example, like Belgium, the agent will pick for you the last name if you don't indicate your last name properly. So in this case, somebody like Caroline Brisa Ariana Diaz will become CBA Diaz. 3 initials, first name, family name Diaz, for example. If you have Cora Lopez Garcia, it will become Cora Garcia, for example. If you don't communicate in your immigration application or your visa application from the beginning that, for example, Ariana Diaz is the family name, you will end up being only Diaz. So it's important to take this into consideration. And here you will find, in a country like Belgium, officials, they are taking the name, they are not so aware about from where you come, how should they transliterate the name. So if you receive your citizenship later on, then you can only change this. But if you are a foreign and you stay as a foreign, you cannot change it. So the child normally here takes the surname of the parent, and they can choose if they take the mother or the father family name. I always advise only one name. Whether you want to take the father family name or a mother, that's not my problem. All I'm saying, keep it one family name and one first name. Also worldwide, you have to look at from which country you are immigrating to another country. Immigration can happen from any sense. Here, for example, we have a famous Egyptian footballer. His name is Mohamed Salah. He has 4 names for sure, but he's intelligent enough to shorten them only to 2 names, Mohamed Salah, and even the first name, Mohamed, he made it shorter and he kept it Mo Salah. Maybe in this context he's working now or was working in Europe, in England or United Kingdom, maybe that's good for him. But Mo Salah or Mo Salah in other countries could be discriminated because Mo is a sound of the cow. So you say mu, it says can be discrimination. So it will always happen, you have discrimination. I'm not here telling you keep changing your name, keep on changing. I'm just saying that in any case you might confront this situation of discrimination. People might not understand. Do what you can do from your side. Make sure you have only a first name and a family name. If you want to make an abbreviation like Nafi, like Mo, it's up to you, but you should not think that by that you will not have discrimination or people might be misinterpret or misunderstand or mispronounce your name. You have to be always open to that. And recently in France we can see that there was some proposals to ban non-French first names that are not French. So I checked on a website, it's non-official for sure. My name is Shady, first name. If I was going to fall under this proposal, it's not a law, it's just a proposal. If I was going to fall on this proposal, my name Shady, it does not comply with the French Republic common names, so I will end up being Davy, you know. So it's important if you are immigrating, you are choosing a name for your kids, also to think where are you going to live, what kind of world we are living in, and to not make it difficult for your next future generation and children. In China and Korea, for example, something happens a lot. It's a very common practice that Asian immigrants, when they go live in the United States or in Europe, they take English names so that Westerners can pronounce them. I personally, I don't like it because I think a name should be as it is. We just keep it simple, first and end name. But anglicizing is based on the British and Anglo-American colonization. So these are all historical problems. Like you see Mari Chow, for example, it happens commonly. My advice people coming from Asia in general, just keep first name and last name as it is. Don't be shy. People must learn the names, and with time we in the West, for example, must learn about Chinese names, like it happened in the history the other way around. Also in immigration, it happens a lot. Parents must make more effort to pick up universally appealing names. You can see what happened with the president, one of the American presidents of the United States. Just because his name was Barack Hussein Obama, because he has origins in Kenya, his whole life became more difficult, and so on and so on. So discrimination happens even against the president of the United States. In this case, it's important to think about selecting only one first name and one family name. It maybe make it easier for them, and they will not go through a lot of worries and a lot of stress and have to explain themselves every time, and people will recognize them easier. By that, I end up today's presentation. I hope it was useful, beneficial. I hope I didn't do big mistakes. Don't hesitate to correct me, but here are some takeaway messages before I leave you. Choose your name. Your name is your brand. Choose the name under which you want to publish. It's very important to think about the following moments in your life. The registration of a newborn name. Maybe you don't have hand in that, it is your parents, but if you are going to be parents, this will be a very important moment. The first time you issue a passport is very important, because the transliteration of your mother tongue name into Latin language will be final. It's very difficult to change it. If you make a mistake, it could be difficult to change. And for sure, the third important moment in your professional and academic career is when you ask for issuing visa. It's very important to make sure you are filling the data properly, and if you can reduce this burden and make it easy with a first name or last name. In visa, most probably you don't have option because you have to copy the same passport name, but then when you create your first account on LinkedIn, on Google Scholar, ResearchGate, Academia, and so on, Scopus, Orchid, make sure that you are just keeping it simple. My name, Shady, can be in French, Shady, C-H-I. It can be in German, Shadi. Take transliteration seriously and choose wisely. I always prefer, if you will transliterate your name, transliterate it to English, not to French, not to German, not to whatever language, because English today is the universal language. You never know where is your child going to live abroad, so English is the easiest to understand, and this is the language that is meant to be used for foreigners in any context. And avoid multiple names. Make sure there is a consistency. Use only a first name and a last name. I hope this is the key message that I crossed today. And distinguish your name if you need by using initials. So don't change your name. You can just put initials of your second name or for your second family name if you need to be distinguished. Imagine your name is very common, you write only a first and a second name, and then you find many people are named the same. Then only in this case you can use initials to distinguish your name. Women scientists should never adopt the man's name. That's a personal advice, and you are not obliged to publish under your legal name. Don't forget here, if your name in the passport, whatever it is, 4, 5, 6, 7 names, fine, it's good, it's in the passport. But it doesn't mean that when you publish in a journal, you need to take the passport name. Just be intelligent. My advice, take the first name and the last name and put them, or make a modification, select whatever you think, ask people, make sure when you transliterate the name that it is universally acceptable, and finally you will have an easy, recognizable name that can be your brand for the future. By that, I end up today's presentation. Don't hesitate to check previous videos in this playlist on academic modules. I hope you can share your comments, you put your input. Don't hesitate to correct anything that you find not wrong. If your country was not listed, don't hesitate to list it. I'm looking forward for your interaction, and share the video with anybody who might be potentially interested or find this work beneficial. Thank you very much. Today's presentation was mainly about how to choose your name for your professional and scientific career. Thank you very much.